ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome into another edition of Infection Podcast. My name is Nick Craig. You can follow me on social media, on Twitter specifically at Nicholas M. Craig, or check out my website, nickcraig.com. We covered the latest ongoings in and around the video game and technology industry, with a little bit of political stuff kind of sprinkled in here and there depending on what is going on. Our website is infectionpodcast.com. Joining me as always, where apparently it snowed this morning in late April.
Welcome to Idaho.
Brian with the Idaho Aldrich. What a disaster.
And it was still almost t-shirt weather here, so it just depends what you're using.
43 is not t-shirt weather.
Hey, once it hits 50, I can walk around.
43 is not 50.
Okay. Yeah, it was
43 is
optimal
closer
today.
to 40 than it is 50, Brian. If it was like 48 or 49, I'd give you 50, but not at 43.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it is a little chilly. But if you want to find me, give me at Voice Computer on Twitter or at Brian Aldridge on Gab, Getter, Truth Social. Parler, I don't know if you saw this. Parler's pretty much shut down.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
They got acquired, and then they pulled them down. So I don't know. They have a statement on their website of what they're going to do or what they're doing. But what is it without a platform where you post things? I don't know what they acquired it for other than to shut it down. It's just kind of an odd. I don't think there was like a bunch of code behind it that was really that good.
No, yeah, it was another attempt at creating a social media equivalent that turned out to be a bunch of nothing.
Yeah. So, anyways, so that's available. Everything but Parler now. So check it out.
Yeah.
All right.
Don't jump off the cliff, Brian. I promise it'll be okay.
Let's follow up on what happened last week. We talked about, and this was all very new. This was things that kind of was suspicious, but somebody had posted, if you remember, or you watched, they had posted Ukraine war plans documents that are supposed to be very secret, very high level. And it was posted by this, was he 21-year-old? 20-year-old Air National Guardsman. So, yeah, and this is pretty crazy. This is something that I figured would be somebody like this, as far as just be a young person. But I didn't expect, and the fact that it was on Discord. But if you look, one thing that I found interesting, if you go down to where Christian Trebert says, a breakthrough in our investigation came when the team identified a Steam profile in Airman in his name that led to an Instagram profile with photos of the exact location where leaked docs were photographed, a kitchen countertop in his child's home. And if you look, they have the apparent match, and you can see these from two angles, just a slight little blotch. And that's supposedly how they matched up and were able to say, hey, this is the same person who took a picture on this countertop of this document versus there's a picture of him just, walking in his kitchen from Instagram. That is pretty crazy. Supposedly a distinctive pattern, but I would assume they took a list of everybody who was in the Discord or who had ever been in the Discord, found their Steam profiles, tried to use that to find other social media that they may be at to narrow it down, since they knew that there was a location that these pictures were taken. If he was trying to be truly secretive, take it in a cardboard box, that you found somewhere.
Well,
not posting it in your home.
Can I, I'm going to throw you on the spot here, because that's what happened to me on my illustrious radio program last week. Somebody called in and I got a text in about, this guy is a whistleblower. And, you use the term whistleblower with somebody like Edward Snowden, who was releasing government documents to expose the federal government for lying about various things. Jack Teixeira was posting in his OG thug something Minecraft server to try and just show off to his friends. He was not attempting to expose anything. He was trying to get social media. He was trying to get cred on social media because that's what social media has done to young people, myself included. It has encouraged us to want to get the likes, get the comments. It's done this to us.
Do the
It's
craziest
brainwashed
thing,
us.
the thing that's going to get you noticed.
Whatever will get me noticed. That's why he was doing. This man is no whistleblower. This man is no Edward Snowden, at least from my vantage point. But there's a lot of folks that say, including was it Marjorie Taylor Greene, the jackass that she is? She's like, well, this guy is a patriot for releasing these documents. He's a jackass that thought that he was going to try and woo over some of his buddies by posting classified documents, and now he is going to deal with some significant jail time.
And this is where I haven't really heard anything from WikiLeaks in a long time. But if he would have approached WikiLeaks or an organization like it, and said, I have documents that I would like released in a way that can't be taken down so that the public can see it. I don't want any personal credit. How can I get this information out in a way that's not going to come tracking back to me? If he would have approached them in that manner, they would have given him all the steps to be able to get these documents to them in a way that's non-incriminating, to where they could have been posted and published on their website or something like that, and the information would have been released.
Yes.
He did it, as you said, in a gamer's small little Discord, and was just posting highly classified documents there with no real commentary on. I don't know what the commentary was, but I haven't seen a manifesto or any kind of a statement from anybody linked to this saying that he was trying to make it known that America was in an unjust war or America's doing anything that he finds to be offensive.
Yes.
And as you said, I came to the exact same kind of conclusion, purely doing this because, hey, I'm going to post something really cool. Look at this, what I have, and posting something, that other people don't have access to.
Nissan Communications puts in, look, it worked for him. Now we're talking about him, Brian. So I guess if the goal is to get a little,
it's a big deal.
To get a little bit of cred, we're talking about him, and we're one of the biggest deals out there. So he was the FBI. By the way, this little thing right here, and I'm glad you pointed this out in the pre-show. Anytime that the government tells you that we have no idea who is responsible for this, or oh my God, we can't figure this out. Just remember this tweet that they used something that looks like a phallic object, which on this guy's dining room table, the design of the marble that looks like a phallic object, they use this to trace this guy down and track
like a
him.
1 inch by 1 inch pattern.
Not even an inch. This is like half
small.
an inch. This is like three little dots on a table.
So a total of a half an inch of a slight pattern in a generic tile, or not tile, but a countertop, and they made a match on that to say this is the person who did it. And they can't track down all these. Well, anyone Antifa
No, never.
Totally, somehow have escaped the system and can't possibly. They've outsmarted everyone or anybody related to the Clintons. I mean, you name it. Can't find any of them. But this guy, his countertop, there was the guy who the Clintons knew that we're going to testify about something, and he ended up being found shot in a tree, somehow hung himself. That guy.
Wait, he didn't. Hold on, you're going way too.
He was shot.
He shot himself. He shot himself in the back of the head twice. I mean, that's a totally normal thing that you would
while
do.
hanging himself, right?
Yes. Yes.
There's nothing. Nothing out of the ordinary there. Can't track anything possibly. To
I was at the gym this afternoon. People were dropping barbells on their necks and dying constantly. It happens all the time when you just go to the gym. People dropped out of that constantly. There's nothing abnormal. So the next time the government tells you that, oh, we can't figure this out, or we have no leads, they are.
Let's go back to this
liars.
tweet and show what ended up. Because people were. Because the one thing they made very clear is they knew before these news organizations started posting anything of like, oh, we think we know who it is. They knew who did this.
Yes.
And that's where so who knows how they did it, but there you go.
Well, and the reason they did it, so this guy worked in IT, which I find rather interesting. So he was he was a very, very low-level guy. I mean, he was a 21-year-old Air National Guardsman. He was a new enrollee for all intents and purposes, working in IT, and had access to presumably some sort of site where these briefings were being published, or an email list where these things were being published on a daily basis, these joint chief reports that are briefed to the president and other folks every morning. So that in itself is a huge problem from a security standpoint. That now here's the reality, Brian. I worked in IT. You worked in IT. You owned your own small business. You had access to information. You had access probably to a lot of information. I can tell you I had an incredible amount of access when I worked in my prior IT field. But there were audits and checks and balances of things that were going on. For example, if anybody in our organization started a large file transfer on any of our computers or any of our clients' computers, it would send an email out and it would notify us, hey, what's going on here? Not just from somebody leaking information. What if somebody's account gets compromised and somebody's trying to siphon data off of a user? Large data transfers. There are things that can be done to verify that, especially on a classified document that is not supposed to be released at all. If somebody downloads that document and then sends it to a printer, you think that might trigger an audit, a flag, a notification, a something, so that folks would go, there's this one user, Jay Teixeira, that every day is downloading this briefing and printing it. What's going on with him? Oh, he's a 21-year-old National Guardsman from Massachusetts. He probably has no reason to be looking at these. It's a huge security oversight, at least from my vantage point, and it could have detrimental impacts for us and our allies.
Well, and one thing that I found interesting is how much of a show they made arresting him.
Oh my God! What a joke!
They bring out fully armored, like they're standing watch. The guys at corners of the vehicle standing watch in case they take fire from the local neighbors. I mean, it looks like he's in an upscale home, in wherever. I'm not sure exactly where they said he was from.
Doing a little bit of pre-reading before he gets.
I mean, he's sitting there reading his Bible.
Oh yeah, well, I'm sure he was. Yeah, I'm sure he was trying to figure out what he's going to do next.
Yeah, and if you look, like they're bringing out military vehicles. I mean, look at this. They've got a guy standing point there, keeping an eye out, in case the neighbors come over the hill with their rifles. I mean, really? I mean, is that really? They have the guy. They probably could have said, "Hey, we'll meet you at the door." But the thing is, they want to discourage. They want to make it look like a big deal. I mean, it is a big deal to them.
We love the government,
but they want to make it to where this showing all of this. That's how big of a deal this is to us. Look at all the military vehicles. Look at all the men in full body armor that came to arrest him.
Well, but here's the thing. They did the same crap with the former president. Right? They raided his house in the middle of the night over classified documents that they already knew where they were because they had visited. I mean, so this is the show of force. It's all show of force from the government to try and flex against.
Make sure you
the
know
public.
that you have to. The thing is, the government does want you to fear them. I mean, to a point, because
and I understand that.
What would be the purpose of doing taxes if there wasn't a level of fear there? What would be the purpose of even driving the speed limit or driving on the correct side of the road? There would be no purpose if there wasn't a level of fear, because respect for common man isn't enough. I mean, look at the things that are happening in Chicago. Respect for common man is not enough to keep a society together. There has to be a level of fear. The problem is when it gets too far, then you get to places like North Korea, you get to places like China, where fear is the only thing left. When they start discouraging having pride in because they keep saying nationalism, right? That's the thing that the left keeps on saying. Oh, that's so scary. But having pride for your country back in the day, during the Cold War when it was us versus Russia then, and you'd stand to pledge allegiance to your country every morning before school, all of this, that's what the left is really pushing against. But that's a way that you can get your people to trust and follow government outside of fear. So why is the left pushing so hard to get rid of respect for your country and saying that that's a bad thing, and then fully only relying on fear as a method of controlling the citizens and population? Where if you could get people to join together and join hand in hand, regardless of whether, because wars tend to do that. That's what the the war in the 90s that we went into with Bush, that everybody was standing behind it. There were all the certain colored ribbons and all of this, the yellow ribbons standing behind them. A war brings people together and kind of leaves politics to the door. And that's probably why they're really trying to get us in a war so we can start acting like we're all friends again. But, have respect for your country, have respect for your fellow man, have pride in your country, like this nationalism that they keep claiming is bad. And guess what? You won't need all the fear. It drives me nuts that they try to demonize that so much. And then they start trying to create fear in cities and towns, right? I feel like there's all a purpose to this madness, and they've been really pushing the fear part. I don't like that. I don't think that we should be fearing our government.
No, we shouldn't. And, in terms of fear, Brian, you've got an article in here from The Atlantic that I find so laughable.
I know. I figured you'd love The Atlantic, so I had to.
It's not just the Discord leak. Group chats are the internet's new chaos machine. And The Atlantic is another one of these groups. Oh, no, they've got the person. Charlie Weisel. Let's see who this. Warzel. Let's see who this guy is. He doesn't have a Twitter. He must have been banned off Twitter. So
he's on
Mastodon,
writes, I'm sure.
Oh, I'm sure he is. Yeah, exactly. So he writes this article about how Donald Trump used group chats to get elected and so on and so forth, and just goes on his diatribe about how group chats are so bad, and they're the new chaos of the internet. And as I read through this, Brian, I thought, since you are my elder here,
yeah.
As early as the internet being the internet, group chats have been an integral part of the internet. They've always existed, have they not?
Well, that was the first thing I did. I remember in junior high, the first thing that I did to get on the internet, because people don't realize, back in the mid-90s with the internet, it wasn't like, I'm going to go to Google and I'm going to find all these cool sites to keep me busy. I mean, there was HP.com, there was Microsoft.com. I mean, there were big companies that existed. There wasn't just tons of stuff because it was new. The first thing I did was go to MSN Chat because there was an app on the computer. They didn't really, web browsers, you didn't really go. I mean, there wasn't a ton of stuff to do at that point in time. So I jumped into MSN Chat and started chatting with people. And that was like my introduction to the internet. Then IRC rolls around and you realize the world is a depraved place, because you do a channel listing in one of the main IRC servers, and everything is child porn and stuff that highly illegal, but they figured it was a place that was unpoliced, and so they could get away with it, and they did for many years. It was years before they really started tracking people. I mean, To Catch a Predator did it better than the government did back then.
And
exactly. so the chat has been the place, and the problem is, chat is a place where people go, and in our Discord, and they'll give their opinions. People generally, back in the day, sure, you could be in a room and chatting with somebody and you figure it was private, but I can't imagine how anybody thinks that anything they do on the internet in a chat group is in any way private. Our Discord, I'm sure it goes through some sort of a system that the government scans for hate speech or something at some point.
Elon Musk was on Tucker Carlson's program last night. He's on tonight again, and he said that the federal government had access to everybody's direct messages on Twitter under the prior ownership. So, I mean, the idea that any of this stuff is secret and private is ridiculous. I love the... Yeah.
Do you remember when there were these Russian hacks? They were talking about the Russian hacks. It was a summer where a number of hacks, supposedly came out of Russia.
We're not talking about 2016, are we?
Maybe, but they came back with this report, and they talked about how they had tracked down at this minute this person in Russia at this computer connected to a VPN, and then did this on the VPN, and they retraced minute by minute the steps of these hackers, supposedly, what they did, and the fact that they're connecting to VPNs with encryption, yet the government still knew every single step of what they were doing. And most people, if you don't realize, here in Utah, for example, there's a data center there.
That you live in Utah or Idaho?
I live in Idaho, but down south, just south of us, they have a data center that records all the traffic of incoming and outgoing things for the internet, in and out of the country. So all traffic they record. every bit of data. And what do you think they do with these new computers, the supercomputers? They have the ability to decrypt traffic. They can give it a chunk of traffic, and they can brute force it, figure out what it was. And I assume that's how they broke through these people's VPN connections that they were using to be able to say this is exactly what they were doing on the traffic of the internet that was coming into your United States. There you go. Yeah. Yes. So
yeah, hacker man, checking it all. I love the outrage over internet chat rooms and how they are the dreg of society, and they're the new chaos agent that everybody is. Yeah. Everything is dealing with, and everybody is dealing with. Just more outrage from the Atlantic.
A place where, they're mad because it's a place that isn't highly censored by the second. Sure, you can get banned off of Discord, you can get banned off of places, but generally it doesn't happen within 5 minutes of making a post, unlike how Twitter used to be.
Yeah, they can't call the federal government and bitch and complain to somebody, or use their friends in the government to bitch and complain to somebody to get something changed, which is what they can do.
I bet you that's changing in Discord now.
Oh, it absolutely is. Discord is
now. Yeah, and I bet you that this has brought it to the attention to where they're now fully integrated with the government to make sure, because the government probably said we could shut you down, or we could do whatever if you don't. I'm sure that they are doing all the things that Twitter did that became exposed after Elon purchased it. I have a feeling that that's exactly how Discord's going now.
The only way to deal with things in the 21st century, Brian, is to meme them into existence. Elon Musk needs to purchase Discord. I know they're not for sale. Elon needs to buy them, spin them into company X with Twitter, and own the space. If he owned Twitter and Discord, we would be unstoppable.
As he likes to call
Titter, as to call it. We'd be unstoppable if he owned Twitter and Discord. I mean, we would have literally freedom on these platforms, which would be great. So we'll keep an eye up on this guy, this old Jack the Sheriff fella. He's dealing with some pretty significant jail time. I believe he's got another court appearance a little bit later on this week. Some stuff is going.
Example of them.
They absolutely in regards to, and they should, because there's a lot of young folks getting into the service, getting into the military.
They don't seriousness.
They don't, obviously not. This guy obviously thought that he was just joking around with his buddies, a little bit of flexing here and there, big dick contest of who's got more important jobs, so on and so forth, and it's come back and bit him in the ass. So we'll continue to follow that. Sony, Brian, you've got a couple of different stories in our notes this week about our great friends at Sony who are barely struggling for life. They are looking at a couple of different things. The first, a handheld console, which is not new for Sony, the PSP.
They had the Vita, the PSP.
Well, the Vita was not very successful. The PSP was incredibly successful in the early 2000s. Yeah. The Vita kind of missed the mark. And now they are looking at potentially jumping back into the handheld space, which right now is pretty exclusively owned by Nintendo. I mean, I know the Steam Deck is gaining some traction, and I know Logitech has their G Cloud and some of these other devices, but Nintendo owns handhelds. And let's be honest, they have, going back to the Game Boy, the original Game Boy, and then the Game Boy Advance through the DSs and everything else. Sony needs something that's their own. Microsoft, I don't think, is going to be building if they do build and we've talked about it, a mobile device, it is going to be more of an Xbox Game Pass streaming machine than it will be a handheld console. I think
others will build it for them, right? Because if they put a good enough app out there, just like what Asus, that Ally that they just are going to be releasing, that's a perfect example. Now, they did partner with them, so it's kind of like them releasing it. But if they just need to make their app work best, they need to make it to where it's the smoothest, the streaming works perfect, and all these companies will end up building the device for them. Now, I think Sony has such a poor history of their software that they're going to have to build a hardware device that's dedicated to it so that they can get it running optimally, because their service isn't that great.
So the rumor from Inside Gaming confirms that the device is codenamed Q-Lite. That's the internal name. It's in QA phases of development, but it does not have a specific cloud streaming focus. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not going to support cloud streaming. It undoubtedly will, but this might be a Nintendo Switch style device that is not reliant and not significantly and not pushing for all only streaming as an option, which you and I have discussed in great detail. While the G Cloud is a cool device, you have to tether it with a device, a phone, to play it and use it outside of your house. And if you're sitting inside your house, why the hell are you going to be using this thing instead of sitting in front of a computer or laptop or a console? So there is still a marketplace for a device that can play games without streaming it. And Sony has the track record to do it.
Well, and I think where they really could have a win is if they turn around and make this something that plays the old PS3, PS2 games, probably even the original PlayStation games. If you can have something that's able to play all of those old systems, and you'll have a huge gaming library that will actually look decent on a little screen like this. It'd be something people would be willing to play. And then you'd be able to open up the door to remasters and having enhanced editions that maybe look a little bit better, that perform a little bit better. But I think that would be a really good step into this space, because all these places are looking at either how are they going to get it streamed there so they can actually have newer, cooler looking games, or how are you going to get people to make content for a small device like this when some of these new games are pushing the limits of, they're even complaining about the Xbox Series S, the S ones, the lower models, running these newer games, and how they're having to dumb down their games to be able to perform on those. There's no way those games are going to run on a little small device like this that's running at a hardware level. So I think bringing in those old titles would be a good way for them to get people using a device, and then see how you expand it from there. Because that's kind of, Nintendo does that a little bit. They include a lot of their original games if you have the subscription. It has the old Nintendo, Super Nintendo, and some Game Boys and things like that.
Yeah, that would essentially an emulation device. PlayStation 2 has got the largest video game catalog of any device, any system ever.
Then you have a huge library ready to go, and it make a subscription service based on that.
But see, that's the issue.
Well, if they don't have all the licensing to it.
They don't have all the licensing for that stuff, but there's so many good series and franchises on the PS2.
But games that are no longer making money on that don't have a way to make money because there's no hardware that they can still run on. If you approach them and say, hey, you've got this IP, we want to bring it into this device, so you'll make some money every month from a product that you thought was dead, and you can decide if you want to spin up and start enhancing it. You probably get a lot of people willing to do that because their IPs are sitting there making hardly any money right now.
Well, and now you've got a generation. When did the PlayStation 2 come out? Came out in 2000. So at this point, it's been 23 years, right? So you've got a lot of people in their late 20s, early 30s that the era of gaming was the PlayStation 2. They now have jobs. They have discretionary income. They can afford a couple of bucks for a device and for a game. This is the time to strike that thing, and I think that's a great idea if they decide to go that route. There's really no idea at all as to what will come of this. It might be in QA. It might be in development. It might never come out. I mean, that's the thing is, part of product testing and development is sometimes things don't end up making sense. So that's on the handheld side of it. And then there's another situation in here that Sony is now going to make another push towards cloud gaming. They had a cloud gaming push early on. They in my opinion, fumbled the bag. They did a really poor job at naming, explaining, and pricing their cloud gaming system. But it looks like they might be making a resurgence. What are you hearing?
Well, so what they're doing is they've posted 22 vacancies on their job board that are all linked to some sort of cloud gaming roles. And so the senior software engineer vacancies are publicly available. And they said on there they encourage the applicants to lead the charge in cloud gaming. So they're going to be hopefully improving PlayStation now to something that works well, because I tried their streaming service and it wasn't seamless. That's one thing. Of course, it's been a number of years later than I tried Microsoft's. So maybe coming back, if they go through and actually optimize the service, part of it is putting in the proper hardware and data centers, making the infrastructure changes, and then having a really good software application that maybe people can use on their phones. Because that's what Microsoft's really done well, is making an app that runs tons of games or connects directly to your Xbox in your home, and gives you a lot of different ways to play. Sony doesn't really have that. You can play in a web browser on a. I think if you run Edge or something, you can play. Oh, you could open up a web browser on a system and then stream it through a web browser on your Xbox and stream. It was ridiculous. They didn't really create ways to play their system, and I think on the PlayStation PC app, like I heard that was very bad. I didn't try it on there. They didn't make it work well, right? And so I think that's where they could come back and actually make it to where, and they're competitive because, as you said, they have a huge IP. This would be the perfect way to play emulated games that don't run on your current hardware anymore, but put it all into the service to where you can play all the original PS2 games, all the original PS3 games, and they just have to create either emulation or hardware that makes it feel like it's running on platform.
Yeah, they definitely have some options. The big thing and what the battle right now that's going on, and this is not even a gaming thing. This is an industry-wide thing. Not even the gaming industry. This is an economy-wide thing. Brian, everybody right now is battling for your, and I'm going to call them your subscription dollars, right? Let's say you have $100 a month that you have for subscriptions. Everybody is battling for that $100, and everybody is trying to convince you that their service at their cost is a better deal than these, and not even in direct competition. I mean, you look at all of the different streaming services, from music to content from providers like Netflix and Amazon and HBO and Paramount. Then you've got the video game side of it. Then you've got just websites that have subscription services, Patreons, all of these various things that are eating up those subscriber dollars every month. Yep. And Sony is going to have to compete with all of these. Their competition is not just Microsoft when it comes to streaming service. Their competition is Spotify, YouTube Premium, HBO, every other thing that has a monthly fee associated with it, and they have to be competitive. Because they can't just come out and say, well, look at this, we're $1 cheaper than Xbox or whatever, buy our service. That's not going to win it, because I might rather spend my money on HBO Max than I would on PlayStation Now if it looks like it's kind of a crappy deal.
And you'll probably get a lot of people that end up doing spurts of subscription to it.
Sure.
Because let's say there's a game that you want to play and it's only available on PlayStation. You'll sign up for that for a couple of months to play that, and then you'll probably cancel it. So that's something they're going to have to kind of figure out if they want to deal with that. But hey, if someone wants to play a game, is that worth it to you, or do you want to keep some of those off of the platform so that you don't have to worry about people doing that, and you're going to get, I don't know. That's something they'll have to figure out. But I think that will be an issue, and hopefully that doesn't create enough instability in their product to where, because that's where Netflix and all these others have started to cut back, because there's been a lot of destabilization in the number of subscriptions. And if you've got one that you only have a lot of subscribers every time you put out an exclusive, that's once again just promoting exclusives, which I'm not a big fan of. And I think it's going to create a little bit of a less happy of a gaming environment for PlayStations. So
yeah, it not only might do that, but then you of course have got everything else associated with that. So streaming is interesting. It's really the new frontier of how things are going to be done going forward. Everybody has a streaming option. Everybody has some sort of subscription plan. Consumers are trying to figure out how to balance that, and how much is. I mean, when you look at, if some people, Brian, sat down and looked at their bank account and saw that they were spending $178 a month on subscription services, they'd probably chop their head off. People don't realize it, because it's $6 or $7 here and $12 here, and it adds up very, very quickly. So being competitive in that space and offering good bang for your buck is what's going to need to be done here. Some half-assed approach like they've had is just not going to cut it. It's just not going to do it. Yep. Too many other good services that are providing good content.
Well, now, and you also have a senator who's sitting there and he's accusing them of anti-competitive behavior because of their exclusivity deals. This is something we've talked about quite a bit. They really got caught with their pants down when they started pointing fingers at Xbox and Microsoft, and then all of a sudden realizing that they're the ones who are committing all of these issues that they're accusing. A U.S. Senator from North Dakota has written a letter to the CEO at Sony, and it said that he felt like he wanted to express concern about Sony's efforts to protect its gaming console business from competition. And so, this is them calling out their exclusivity deals and having issues with those. There is a thing Senator Kevin Kramer posted, and he had a press release about it. If you're interested, we'll have a link in our show notes. You can go check out the original source to that. But he's now asking for unredacted copies of all agreements that give Sony an exclusive right to distribute a third-party game, all agreements between Sony and third-party publishers to prevent them from releasing their games on other systems, all internal company documents describing the strategic rationale for Sony's decision to acquire Bungie, all correspondence with U.S. governments or regulatory agencies relating to video game competition. So whether or not they'll actually follow through with this, I don't know if there's anything more than a suggestion that encourages them to do this, but I'm sure that's information they don't want released.
Based on what I think I know, Brian, I would tend to agree with you. I don't think they want any of that stuff coming to light at all. But actions have consequences, and they have decided. Sony wants to play this hardball of we're the victim and woe is us, and oh my God, please step in and save the government, save us. We're this damsel in distress. The reality is Sony is anything but what they claim to be, at least from my vantage point.
And a patent expert has come out speaking against Sony because they've looked at their patents, and in there they have what they call childish and unprofessional language, because they keep calling their rivals inferior and using all these different terms to put down their rivals in their patent claims. And he says they've been doing it for 20 years. I think he's analyzed more than 20 years, and he has criticized them for the language. So even to that level, like I just think it shows a lot to their character. I don't know if it's character of a company, but their mindset and the way that they view other people. And I think a lot of it has to maybe maybe this is a culture thing that we're not catching, or who knows. But I found it interesting that just the way that they bash people even in patent applications, but then of course the other company is so much superior when it comes to a court case that they need the help, as you said. Kind of opposites.
Yeah, I don't think there's when you understand, when you remember or connect the two dots that Sony, the video game company, is also Sony Entertainment and Sony Pictures, you start feeling a lot less bad for them. And then you also look at the sales statistics and see that the PlayStation 5 has way outsold the Xbox. You just, every little bit of all these little facts start ticking up, and then you look at the scoreboard, Brian, you're like, it's 12-1. And you guys are you're the victims. I'm not understanding where you guys are getting done dirty in all these circumstances.
Well, hey, let's move over to another questionable legal issue, and that's, remember the Dark and Darker? Somebody had suggested in chat that we go and check out Dark and Darker, and then the next day, remember we reported that all of a sudden they were raided by the police,
the Korean government,
and everything was going in Korea. Well, now that they've been pulled from Steam, they're releasing their playtests on torrent, and so you can still go and playtest their system, but you need to be willing to turn around and use a torrent to be able to download it, which someone posted all the instructions in our Discord, and it totally looks sketchy, but it's what they're doing. And this isn't the safest way to do it, because people could adjust the links a little bit here and there.
Well, there should be a hash on it.
Who knows,
right?
what? Yeah, but go to their website as the source and download it if that's what you're planning on doing.
So there's a magnet URL. How is this shady? There's a magnet URL from the website.
Well, but I'm saying if someone posted it in Discord and said, click this link to download the client.
That's true.
Be careful of that. I'm not saying that Dark and Darker is you putting out scandalous things, but when you use a torrent as the primary way to transmit your product, people can then, as they did in our Discord, post and say, hey, here's a link to be able to get to the torrent. You don't know that that's the original torrent link.
Sure,
so
that's
just
true.
Use wisdom. Go find the original source. Click the link there. Not saying the person in our Discord didn't. We know them and I trust them. But in other Discords, I could see this happening easy. People say, hey, here's the place to go get this, and it takes you to something that gets your IP address, installs software on your computer, does all kind of fun things.
I will note that the alpha test is set to end tomorrow, April 19th. So if you've not already done this, it might not be worth your time. I'll tell you what. And I know you've got another story on this, but before you do that, I want to go back to. I want to just stay on this for a second and talk about using a torrent. What a great idea for an indie developer who does not obviously have the money or resources to host a CDN to handle these downloads. I know torrenting, the initial impression is, torrents, you're illegally downloading, you're stealing content. Torrenting is a phenomenal protocol for things like this, Brian, where you don't have to have a centralized server. You don't have to spend thousands of dollars a week on bandwidth through a CDN. You literally need one person to have the original file and have a halfway decent seed ratio, and you're in like Flint.
And it goes through and actually checks to make sure the files are the same files. There are things put in there where you can have 100 people serving this content out, and they're all going to serve you the same files. And if it's not the same file, it'll reject it and move on. So, yeah, definitely a good way to do it. Who knows? Because supposedly there's all these things happening with it. I don't know what's happened to innocent until proven guilty with situations like this where really we don't know that much information. We don't know totally what's going on.
What was the issue
here? They said that someone stole code from
a prior company,
from a project they were on, and then released it in this. Yeah. Maybe that happened, but until there's a there's a lawsuit currently. But until this turns around and they're in a court of law found guilty that they have done this, I'm not going to assume. It could be somebody who just doesn't like their product and is trying to shut them down temporarily and make it to where they can't continue with their playtest so that the other person can get to market faster. That's a totally plausible thing that could happen. Not saying that that's what did happen, but you don't know that that's not what happened. So is it fair to shut down this company 100% during the pre-trial phases and figuring out what's happened? Maybe the government but it doesn't sound like the government's come in and said you need to cease and desist, because if they're still continuing, right, it sounds like they just came in and got information so that they could press charges possibly. Well, press the charges, take it to court. If they ended up doing something, you'll be able to shut them down. But should you stop them from doing any kind of play testing up to that point? Not necessarily, because you haven't proven that they've done anything wrong yet.
Well, I'd like to quote one of my personal heroes, Brian. She's a lady from California, and her name is Nancy Pelosi. And I'd like to quote her. She's a real hero of mine, and she has said about our former president, he'll have the opportunity to go to court and prove his innocence, because that's what they believe. The court is for you to prove that you're innocent, not the burden of proof needs to be on the individual charging you or alleging something against you. Yeah, it absolutely is.
Like, before your execution, if you convince me that you didn't do it, maybe you're innocent, right? That's more the mindset that they have. You're going to the gallows unless something intervenes. Well, that's not how America was built. Of course, these guys are in South Korea, so it's a little bit different than here. But the whole innocent until proven guilty thing is what I try to maintain here, because look at how many times we're always lied to. I mean, just look at so many things that we're constantly lied to about and fed a line, social media, news organizations. They're all feeding you a bunch of lies. And I think COVID really brought that to a head when, there were certain theories that were floated around. And then, then you were told that you were totally 100% wrong, impossible, you're stupid.
Tread lightly.
Oh, I am, believe me. And then you turn around however many years later, and then it's becoming apparent that you were right the whole time, right, on certain aspects. I didn't say any specifics. You can fill in the blanks with whatever specifics you want to for those situations, because it happened over and over again, right? So I think that's just something where here you don't know the facts. And
No.
they're going to have all these presentations in court. We'll see what happened, because maybe that it's a total false accusation. We don't know that yet. So let them do all their play tests. They shouldn't have pulled them off of Steam until Steam knew, because Steam is making an assumption of guilt. They are making an assumption that they do not know. Is that fair? Just like they did on Twitter and all these other places, saying that you did something wrong, or when we got a video taken down off of YouTube saying that we did something wrong on something they can't prove was wrong. Right? That's the kind of the thing we've gotten into now, where you said, just like Nancy Pelosi says, you have to prove you're innocent to be able to get back out of jail. Well, no, to keep me in jail, you need to prove that I'm guilty. Well, you guys don't prove that. You don't provide the facts. You just want it to be the other way around, and you're guilty unless something changes.
Well, our friend Big Woody Sauce is saying that we're sounding like real conspiracy theorists now. So I guess the new infection podcast.
I know Big Woody too well to know that he believes all those conspiracies.
Living right up to our names here. Speaking of court battles, Brian, and being innocent until proven guilty, old Nintendo, who loves throwing around their weight in regards to legal matters, they will sue. They'll sue an 8-year-old kid for uploading a video to like Facebook Video or whatever, Facebook Watch, with copyrighted music from a Nintendo game. But they won a pretty massive lawsuit against a website that was being used to pirate its games. This is a pretty interesting one.
Yeah. So you've got D-Storage, which is the name of the service, was liable for failing to remove or block access to pirated copies of Nintendo games distributed via file hosting website onefichier.com, which I've never heard of, so it must have been a really niche site.
Or they were hosting the files in the back end, and they were being publicly displayed.
They were the back end doing it, but and they felt like they didn't do a good enough job, probably not responding to takedown requests, things like that. And so here they said that they are now ordered to pay 442,750 pounds, or euros, actually. Is that euros? To Nintendo in compensation, as well as 25,000 euros to cover the legal fees. So this is not going to be very profitable for them. Nintendo is pleased with the decision of the Paris Court of Appeals. So this happened in Paris. And so... yeah, so we will see if this changes. Who knows? I mean, I have another article right after this talking about someone called Bowser. I don't think this was like a Nintendo hacking group. Okay. But he was indicted in 2020, and he was jailed last year for his involvement in that hacking group. Mm-hmm. And he is now ordered. So he was released from federal prison, but has to pay Nintendo for the rest of his working life. So,
well, not necessarily. He just needs to make over $14.5 million as a convicted felon.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, he's been paying $25 a month of his prison wages, so he's paid $175 so far towards it. But he's got a 4.999999% left to go, or a million left to go, before he's able to pay this off and have that gone. So they do take it seriously, and they will prosecute you if you do things like this.
So Big Woody Sauce is asking the age-old question in chat, and this is exactly the conversation that Kim.com made and has continued to make with Mega. It was a Mega Upload, now
Mega Upload, yep.
Mega CZ or Mega Co, whatever the current one is. And the question is/should hosting be similar to publishing when it comes to protection? And that is always that's always the gray area. And we saw essentially what happened with Kim.com. They forced him to, I believe he lives in Chechnya or something like that now. He's, by the way, he's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He is so incredibly wealthy. But he lives somewhere over in Eastern Europe now. And they essentially ran him out of the United States. The U.S. is still trying to extradite him. He's been arrested by authorities over there.
He lived down in, not in Australia, but in like Kiwi area.
New Zealand?
But he in New Zealand. He was in New Zealand when That's when some of these things happened.
Oh, I thought he lived in the U.S. for a period of time. Maybe not.
Well, but during that, when he was raided, that was in New Zealand. Like they raided his place in New Zealand from whatever.
So that's where he lives now, correct? But he lives. I believe. Did he? Maybe he never lived in the United States. I could be wrong, but nevertheless, they've been going after people like him. And you look at Mega Upload, and his whole thing was, we didn't do anything. We were a source and a site for people to upload content. Now, Mega Upload was one of the biggest one of the biggest content sites for illegal content. They had over 150 employees, were making $175 million in revenue, and had about 50 million daily downloads. It was the 13th most popular website on the internet. But he was just providing the storage, essentially. And he still got indicted in this case in Virginia.
Well, look at even something like the Pirate Bay. If you look at the Pirate Bay and kind of their history, that makes a ton of money. And how it makes money is because files aren't necessarily stored anywhere with the Pirate Bay. There's magnet links, which are just text, right? And this is where the question really comes down to, and I think where Big Woody Sauce is more going towards, is that is a hosting company where just text links that are not the files themselves, are those something that you should be able to prosecute? Rather than going to the source. Now here they were hosting the files. I think that's where the big difference comes down to. Or with publishing, you're not necessarily giving anything away.
I disagree.
I think with a publishing, to make it more that argument, the magnet links I think is more of what you'd view a publisher as, because they're not necessarily holding the documents themselves as the source.
But in many cases they are, and I think that's the interesting thing.
But they're an avenue to it.
He says, publishing in terms of, we're talking about in the case would be news or media. There's the infamous case, Brian, and see if I can pull it up real quick of, I believe it's, who was the Cuomo on CNN? Not Andrew, his brother.
Chris?
Chris Cuomo,
Chris
where
Cuomo.
there was some leaked documents, and he said that, these documents are illegal to possess unless you're us. And that is...
you need us to be able to decide. I remember this.
Yeah, I want to see if I can find
we will be... Yeah, and this is the thing that because they were scared of people going and seeing something for themselves, but once again, this kind of starts back to our whole original conversation of information being illegal.
And boy, I'll tell you what, man, this show is so bizarre to me. You're my show. Because we come full circle. This is in regards to Hillary Clinton's emails and WikiLeaks from 2016. Yeah. I think this is the full audio. Let's see.
Also interesting is, remember, it's illegal to possess these stolen documents. It's different for the media. So everything you learn about this, you're learning from us. And in full disclosure, let's take a look at what is in there and what it means. Joining us now.
That's it. That's it right there. It's illegal for you to possess these. Yes.
Total fallacy.
I agree with you. It is a fallacy. I'm not arguing that it's not. The point is, there is a certain, for example, if the Washington Post tomorrow publishes the Pentagon Papers, they're not going to be suing the Washington Post and coming after their ass for it. They're going to go after the leaker. And I think that's the $1 million question when it comes down to storage and file storage. Ross says, what about Google Drive? There's a whole plethora
tons of piracy
illegal
that
content.
happens on,
Exactly. But that's the thing is it's like everything else. It's selective prosecution, right? It's determined that, this guy, this Kim.com guy is kind of a bad actor, so we're going to go after his ass, but we're going to allow Google to continue to have Google Drive be a huge place and a great place for content to be shared, both legal and illegal.
Look at Twitter pre-Musk. Tons of child porn and illegal activity that was happening on there that they were making no attempts to prevent. Yet the government was in their hands-on saying, we didn't like how this post said something negative about this person. Can you take it down for us? But then because that's one thing he curbed early. He walked in, made some changes, and curbed a lot of that content on the platform. And so I think that's really... I think that it's just silly to think that they care about what these companies are actually doing. It comes down to politics,
Yep.
And the fact that they'd allow child porn, but then they're cracking down on other things that they're acting like they're so serious. I think it's just sad. It shows you the kind of where we're at. And one thing I just bring this up as a thought. We are conditioned to think about things being bad, right? The fact that we look at the fact of having something that we view as copyrighted on there and how scary that is. It's just kind of funny that as a mindset, we're conditioned to be scared of that, right? Does that make sense? To fear something like this when it's something that history up till now really didn't even have to think about. Having some virtual crime where you're not going and stealing something from somebody physically, kind of like the videos of would you print a car? Well, yes, if I could.
And I can now. I have a maker bot, so I can.
You know what I'm saying? Like they're saying, would you do these things? Well, yeah, I probably would if I could. If I could print a car and it was cheaper than buying a car from a company, I probably would print a car. But it's just crazy now that they've set up these virtual walls of this is good, this is bad, and like we're so conditioned to fall into those lines. And this is a perfect example of that. There's information that you can't share. Yeah, you wouldn't download a car. Yes, I would. I would 100% download a car.
Yeah, why not? If it was free, why the hell not?
It's a free car. I mean, talk about you want to save the environment. Let me download my car. Yeah. I just think I just find that as kind of an interesting mental thing. Just looking at it, it's like we have these things that we now view as society. That's so bad. Somebody's going to prison, for years because they stole some idea from somebody. When you got China doing it left and right every day, and North Korea and Russia now.
So, yes, all of those back end points absolutely true. China, China will literally there's a situation here in North Carolina, a company known as Charlotte Pipe. It's named after Charlotte, North Carolina. Mm-hmm. Surprise, surprise. China stole their intellectual property. This happened like a decade ago.
Yeah, they do it all the time.
China stole their intellectual property and branded their stolen intellectual property as Charlotte Pipe and then sell it back to the United States. Charlotte Pipe buys it, refines it, and then turns it back into their own product. That is their solution to dealing with it because there's no other way besides allowing this counterfeit crap out into the public. So that's their solution. Yeah. I'm not disagreeing with any of that. That's a different conversation, however.
I know. That popped into my mind. I'm just looking at it's amazing how we put so much importance on something virtual and fake. There's people going to prisons.
But it's not virtual and fake. Intellectual property absolutely has an intrinsic value. Yeah. It should cost people money, and I think it's okay to do that. And I think it should be protected. I mean, there is a level of intellectual property and copyright that needs to be handled. However, when I play a 5-second clip on a YouTube video from a song and then Universal comes after me and tries to put a lien against my house, maybe that's a little bit overboard from what we're trying to talk about. I'm all right with protecting copyright. If I try to download it, if I upload an entire song,
I'm not an anti-copyright
I know,
guy,
I know you're not. I know you're not. I'm saying if you upload an entire song to YouTube, don't attribute it and just publish it up there for free like you used to do back in 2009, then that's a problem. And there should be some responsibility and accountability for that. If you are actively encouraging folks to upload illegal content to your website when you're this Nintendo ISO, which it was an ISO website where people would download, or not ISO, ROM site where people would download Nintendo games, and you're encouraging that, you're having a directory of all of these things, you're coming very close to touching the sun. The thing I say with Mega Upload, there was no directory on Mega Upload. I don't believe there was even a search on Mega Upload. It was just these hot links, these direct links all over the internet that would be to download content off of the website. So I think it's the intent there, and it's how you get around that. Intellectual property.
But the problem is we need to go after these countries because that's 100%. If you want to solve this problem, go after China. Start pressuring China because China is the culprit on a lot of these things. And it's not coming down to like this song or that, but they're stealing on a regular basis from our universities, from our companies. That they are costing tons and tons of money, yet it's ignored. And then they go after these individuals, doing Nintendo hacks on whatever. You know what I'm saying?
I go back selective. It's not funny. It's selective prosecution. It's easier to go after some poor sack of, some poor sorry sack.
Make an example of
that's going to have to spend, is going to spend the rest of his life as a convicted felon trying to pay off Daddy
money
Nintendo
for the rest of his life. Yeah,
exactly. And it's really hard to go after China when you've got a vegetable in the Oval Office that can barely put together what day of the week it is, and is not going to stand up to our adversaries. So it absolutely is a problem. It is undoubtedly selective prosecution. It's enforcement of the law against certain people for certain purposes, and it's not just copyright. You're seeing it right now where you've got a district attorney in Alvin Bragg who wants to, get his whistle wet over the former president, but wants to allow gangbangers, rapists, and everybody else to roam the streets of Manhattan and New York City. It's with everything, Brian. There is no equal application of seemingly anything in our society right now, and it really pisses a lot of people off, as it should, because it's bullshit.
Well, and even look at what's happening in Chicago right now, where you've got just droves of people going and beating up people because they're different than them. And if it happens in any other situation, you'd have one side of the aisle flipping out and demanding riots just to counter it. And it just, but then there's no outrage because it's not targeting the group that you want to back personally.
Correct.
Right. It's just some lady, some white lady got attacked. What can you say? A bunch of rowdy kids. Where if you had a bunch of white kids hit like that, just swarming onto a minority of whatever, fill in the blank of the minority, you'd have outrage. And it comes down to selective outrage, selective prosecution, selective everything. And that's where I think people need to turn around. If you're going to be upset, regardless of what my politics are, if something happens to me and you're going to be upset about it, it shouldn't matter what my politics are. I think it's crazy.
Yeah, it absolutely is crazy, and it's definitely one of the things that I've talked about it a lot this morning on the morning show, and it's something that I'll continue to talk about because it's a pretty important thing. All right, Brian. Well, great conversation as always. It's always amazing how we traverse and somehow end up at the finish line every week. Where can folks find you online?
All right, we can find me at Boise Computer on Twitter, at Gab, Getter, Truth Social, wherever it is on at Brian Aldridge. And so if you want to go to my website, go to biteoftech.com, and you can go to our website, infectionpodcast.com. And I would encourage you to go to the upper right. We'll see as long as Discord still stays free and open. We'll be on Discord for a while. But in there, we've got a show news channel if you want to go post some links or get a little bit of a heads up of things that we might be talking about on the upcoming show. We also have 11 ARC servers running there and the Conan Exiles and different things you can do, politics or play games. You can make your choice when you enter the server. If you want to watch us, you can do that through Twitch or YouTube, also on Rumble, uploaded after the fact. Also, if you want to listen to it after the fact, you can do that through the lower right-hand side. A lot of different platforms and devices that you're able to do that on. Just pick which one is best suited for you. And by then, that means the show notes for that particular episode are uploaded. So you can go jump in there, play the video audio player that's built in, and then click the links to maybe watch a video, see some source material on what we're discussing to make sure we're on target. A lot of different reference material there if you want to use it to help append the show. Also, if you want to support us up top, there's a support option or infectionpodcast.com/support.
Yes, so those are a couple of ways that you can help us here on the program. Don't forget, you can also check out our shows.
Follow us on Rumble, too. Yeah.
Yes. We need to get a link to that up on the website. Our Rumble channel where we've been posting the shows as well. If you are an anti-YouTuber and want to watch that stuff, you can watch the full video version. It's typically about a day or so late. Come out like Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon up on Rumble. So check that out as well. Brian, thank you, chatters, and everybody watching live. Appreciate you as well. Great conversations and comments as always. You can follow me on Twitter at Nicholas M. Craig. You can check out my daily antics at my website, nickcraig.com, and download the Wilmington's Morning News podcast. There's chapter markers in the podcast so that you can scrub through and find just the specific portion or content that you want to hear about or listen to. So remember, if you miss any portion of the show, you can always visit our website. It's infectionpodcast.com. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.